Hello, good afternoon, sir, and all research scholars. Myself, Viral Sapra, research scholar at the Department of Commerce and Management, Bhaktakavi Narsi Mehta University. Today, we are privileged to have our resource person, Mr. Gautam Sarma, sir, for the PhD coursework session. He will be delivered a lecture on the topic Variables and Measurement in Research. Mr. Gautam Sarma sir is a distinguished academician and researcher in the field of commerce and management with over 60 years of extensive teaching experience at both graduate and postgraduate levels. He holds qualifications with specialization in accounts and finance, banking and insurance, and marketing management, reflecting his multidisciplinary academic expertise. He currently serves as assistant professor at Nahata Jogardhanath Mandal Smriti Mahavidyalaya, Kolkata, West Bengal, a position he has held since November 2020 2060, and also contributes as a guest lecturer at Netaji Subhas Open University, Kolkata, and West Bengal State University, Barsat, Kolkata. Earlier, he served as a full-time lecturer at the Bhawanipur Education Society College, Kolkata since December 2008. Mr. Sharma sir has made significant scholarly contributions through active participation in numerous national and international conferences where he has presented research papers on diverse themes with his domain. His research work has been widely published in reputed peer-reviewed journals and edited volumes. He has also contributed several book chapters, particularly in the area of Indian knowledge system and Indian banking ecosystem. His core research interests include banking and insurance, accounting and finance, and marketing management. In recognition of his academic excellence, research contributions, and teaching effectiveness, he has been honored with several prestigious awards, including the Best Researcher Award in 2020, 2019, Best Faculty Award in 2020-21, Best Academician of Year Award in 2020-21, Uthan Rashtriya Shiksha Ratan Award in 2025, and the Glory of the Nation Award in Leadership and Governance in 2026. I warmly welcome Mr. Gautam Sarma sir and all the participants to this session. Please sir continue the session.
Madam, with your permission, should I start?
Yes sir.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon, everyone present on this virtual platform across the country. I am truly honored to be a part of this ongoing PhD coursework second round program for the academic session 2025-26. I extend my sincere gratitude to all the organizing members of Kavi Narsingh Mehta University, Junagadh in general, and Dr. Dinesh Chavda, PhD coordinator, Bhakt Kavi Narsingh Mehta University, Junagadh in particular, for inviting and providing me with this valuable opportunity. Today, on the second day of this insightful PhD coursework program, I look forward to contributing meaningful to the learning journey ahead. I am also thankful to Hiral Chopra Madam for a kind introduction in my favor. Thank you all, and I wish you a very productive and engaging sessions ahead. Without much to do, let's dive into the topic for the session. Chen. Madam, is it visible? My screen, is it visible? Hello, is it visible?
No, sir.
It's not visible, ma'am?
No, sir.
Okay. Is it visible, ma'am? Ma'am, is it visible?
No, sir. Not yet visible. Sir, plus icon and select option share screen.
Yeah, select screen after then. Is it okay, ma'am, this time?
Yes, sir. Visible.
So with your kind permission, the the topic for the sessions today is understanding variables in research, types, roles, and applications in research design. This entire topic will cover around several themes and subthemes as meaning, importance, clarifications, and subclassifications, mapping of literatures with variables. Before I proceed further, I would be happy to ask a question with all the participants present on this platform that we in any research we starts with a research problem and ends with the conclusions and recommendations. So, as per the knowledge, there should be a coherence, there should be a relationship, there should be a linkage between the background, between the problem statement, and the conclusions and recommendations. So, this linkage is very important. If any research does not show the linkage, that means it's not of worthy. So, this entire linkage is designed by the research design framework. In other words, we can say that the research design is the concept that integrates, that provides linkage between the research problem and the conclusions and recommendations of any research problems. So, before we move ahead, before we dive into the core topic of the day, variables, as a researcher, as a scholar, we must have basic idea regarding the research design, the knowledge without which we cannot understand we will not be in a position where we are going, in which directions we are going. So, as a scholar, we must have a little bit, a small understanding regarding the research problems, research designs. In the times to come, during your course work, the other teachers, other experts will definitely deal with these concepts in detail. So, as per the understanding of the variables, you are expected to have a basic understanding of the research design. So, what is research design? So, research design it originates with a research problem, which states that what do we want to study. Once we are assured what we want to study, there comes the research design. So, research design is defined as a plan or a framework that guides the entire research process from start to finish. It is a plan and structure of the study. It includes identifications and classifications of the variables. And here comes the role of the variables. Framing research questions, planning data collections and methods, conducting data analysis and interpretations. So all these are components of the research design, and out of the various components, identifications and classifications of variable is one such important concept, one such important components. The purpose of a research design is to outline the overall approach and methods used to collect and analyze data to answer research questions or test hypotheses. Research design ensures a systematic structure for the research, shaping every step until the findings. So here is about a basic understanding, a basic introductions regarding the knowledge of the research design, its components, and the identification and variables of is one such component, and that is the main theme of the sessions today. So before I proceed further, I would be happy to ask the audience, the participants, that do you have any questions or any queries till here? Any questions from your side, or are you comfortable with it? Any issue from the audience side, the participants, the learned scholars? Should I proceed further? Yes, ma'am. Should I proceed further? I'm not getting the response from the other side. Hello, hello, ma'am. Should I proceed further?
जी सर.
Should I proceed further? Is it all right till now?
Yes sir, yes sir.
Okay, okay, sure. Thank you. So, after the basic understanding of the research design, it is equally important to have basic understanding of the various types of research design, because it has its relevance to the knowledge of variables, the better understanding of variables. So, for the learned scholars, for the beginners in this area, let's have a little bit understanding of the types of quantitative research design. We start with the descriptive research design. It answers the question, what is happening? Second is the correlation research design. It answers the questions to the researcher as what is related to what. Correlational design, it refers to relationship focused research. It requires quantifiable and measurable variables, which we are going to learn in the later part of this session. We have an output there that determines the strength and direction of association. Correlation research design is an associative study, it's not a causative study. We have experimental research design. It answers the question as what happens if we change variable x. Here x is an independent variable. We have explanatory research design which answers the question as why does it happens. Causal research design, the question it answers is does X cause Y? Next we have diagnostic research design. What is the problem and why is it occurring? We have a cross-sectional research design which answers the question as what is happening at a specific point in time. We have longitudinal research design. How does something change over time? Longitudinal research design is not tied to just one hypothesis type. Instead, it is chosen when your hypothesis involves time, change, or causality over time. We have another category under quantitative research design as mixed method research design. It answers multiple questions as what is happening, why is it happening, and how can be understood comprehensively. So these are some of the various classifications under the major heads types of quantitative research design, the knowledge of which is very much needed for any researcher, any, any beginner scholars to move ahead and end with the conclusions. We have another broad category of research design as qualitative research design, which consists of grounded theory, thematic analysis, discourse analysis, observational research design, and studies. These research designs would be dealt by the experts in the due course of the time. For a basic understanding, let's dive into the grounded theory. It answers the questions what theory can explain the phenomenon. We have a thematic analysis. What are the main themes or patterns in the data? Discourse analysis. How is the meaning constructed through language? Observational research design. What is actually happening in real life settings? And finally, the case study. How and why does this case functions? So these are some of the basic knowledge regarding the themes, the research designs under qualitative category. Now, after learning about the research design, its components, its classifications, we now come to our the theme of the day as variables. So we start the variables with its meaning. characteristics, and significance. So let's start with the meaning of a variable. What does a variable mean to a researcher? So a variable is any characteristics, value, quality that can be observed, measured, or counted in some or other forms. Let's take an example for better understanding. Marks or income is a variable which can be measured numerically. We have another types of variables as gender, type of the organization as public and private sector, which is measured categorically. As the characteristics of the variables, we should learn that variable should be capable of showing a relationship with another variables. Let's take an example. Study time affects academic performance. It means that if we spend more hours towards our studies, it is expected that the output, the performance, the result of the students will improve positively, favorably. Measurement of a variable should be free from personal bias. It means that the results should be the same regardless of who measures them. It should not be based on the biasness, the preferences of the researcher. The next characteristics of a variable is a variable should give consistent results when measured repeatedly under similar conditions. It simply means that if the condition remains the same and if the test is repeated, it must produce similar output. Example: a student takes the mathematics ability test on Monday and scores 75 marks. The same student takes a similar test again on Wednesday under similar conditions and scores 76 marks this time. The scores are almost the same, showing consistency. This means the variable mathematics ability, which was measured by the test, is reliable because it produces consistent results over repeated measurements. After the meaning and basic characteristics of the variable, let's dive into the importance or significance of the variables. Why a researcher, before he conducts his research work, needs to have an in-depth understanding of the variables. What if what are the consequences of the absence of understanding? We will look into the next section. As the first point, it converts a vague idea into a specific researchable problem. That means the proper understanding, the proper knowledge of a research variable converts a vague idea into a specific researchable problem and in proper direction. Let's take an example. Insurance companies, the topic for the research is insurance company should improve their performance. So, from the researcher's point of view, this statement is unclear. Why so? Because this topic it raises certain questions as what kind of performance. The topic has not mentioned the specificity of the theme as what kind of performance, what factors affect it, and how the test has to be done, how the variables has to have to be measured. So Instead of the vague topic as insurance companies should improve their performance, it would be much better to have a refined version of the topic as does claim settlement efficiency influence the performance of insurance company controlling for company size? This is the refined version in the sense that the topic contains independent variable, that is claim settlement efficiency. We have a dependent variable, company's performance, and the control variable, company size, which we will be learning further ahead. As a second importance of the understanding of the variable is variables are essential for developing testable hypotheses. In quantitative research, the researcher needs to establish hypotheses as well as to test them. So, in order to execute the establishment and testing of the hypothesis, the knowledge of variable is equally needed. Example, increase in X leads to increase in Y. This has to be hypothetically tested and confirmed. We have the next point as nature of variables manipulated or observed determines the research design. In some cases, as a researcher, we manipulate the independent variable, and in other cases, we go for observational method. We do not manipulate them. We take them, we consider them in their existing form. As for example, if as a researcher during the process, if we manipulate the independent variables, we technically call them as experimental research design. Whereas in other cases, if we are only observing them rather manipulation, we call them as correlational design, where researcher only observes what already exists. The next point, variable makes it possible to measure the concepts in a structured way. Without variables, data collection would be unclear and inconsistent. So every researcher needs to collect data, and that has to be in a particular and right direction, and here again the role of variables comes into play. As for example, a researcher says, I want to study customer satisfaction in an insurance company. Let's take a situation where there is no proper identification of variables. What would happen? There the several questions arises as what is satisfaction? How will it be measured? So without identifying variables, data collection becomes confusing and inconsistent. Whereas in the second case, in the second situations where the variables have been properly identified and classified, the things becomes easier as customer satisfaction representing as dependent variable, which is measured by rating scale 1 to 5 scale. Complaints frequency, renewal intention of the policy as yes or no. There is in another category of the variables as independent variables as claim settlement time in terms of days, service quality of the insurers through service score. So here the two situations have been taken into consideration as situation 1 and situation 2. In situation 1, what would be the consequence, what would be the uncertainty that would arise in absence of proper classifications of variables, whereas what would be the how the research would be facilitated, how the research would become easier if things are properly classified, properly identified by the researcher in advance. Next point is research aims to understand the relationship between variables. Example, cause effect, correlation or association can only be studied through variables. That means in any research, the researcher tries to find out the cause and effect between one variable and the other variable, or he wants to establish the correlation or associative relationship. So, whatever might be the situations, whatever might be the cases, whatever might be the study, the knowledge, the identification between the weight of the variables and the relationship is equally needed. Variables make it possible to analyze how one factor influences another, which is the core purpose of any research. And finally, we have the next point as all statistical tools, mean, correlation, regression, etc., are applied to variables. Without variables, quantitative analysis is impossible. So without variables, let's take an example. A researcher says, I want to study the performance of insurance companies. The problem here arises is no measurable elements. Performance in terms of what? Cannot calculate anything. No numbers, no categories. Statistical tools like mean, correlation, regression cannot be applied effectively. So these are some of the pros and cons of proper identification and classifications of the variables. So finally, it can be said that variables enables a researcher in defining what exactly is being studied, measuring concepts in a structured way, analyzing of relationship between independent and dependent variables, logical interpretations of the data, and finally drawing conclusions in coherence, in linkage, in association with the problem statements. So with this, we have come to an end regarding the significance, regarding the role played by the variables in a research. After this, we go in detail regarding the different types of variables and their subclassifications. We will take various examples in order to have better understanding of each of these variables in detail, and these examples would provide more clarity, more understanding regarding the functioning of these variables. So let's start with the first variable as independent variable. It can be represented as IV. Let's take what are the characteristics of the independent variable. The independent variable is the variable that the researcher controls, manipulates, uses for prediction, or considers as the cause in the study. It is the variable that the researcher manipulates or changes to see if it has an effect on the dependent variable. In other words, or put simply, a researcher tries to make certain changes in the independent variable and measures that on account of change in the independent variable, how the dependent variable is being affected, whether there is any effect or not, or if there is any effect, what is the extent, what is the level of the effect. It is called independent because it is not influenced by any other variables in the study. There are different names used for independent variables. Some call it as an input variables, others may call it as predictor variables. They can be used to predict the value of a dependent variable. Some might call it as an explanatory variables. They explain an event or outcome. Some might call it right-hand side variable. Why? Because they appear on the right side of a regression equation. The next feature of an independent variable is the independent variable precedes the dependent variable. Cause always comes before the effect. It means that we have independent variable and then comes the dependent variables. The independent variable is usually applied at different levels or categories to see how the outcome differs. It means that there might be various categories, various levels of independent variables, and how it affects how the different level or different strength of the independent level affects the dependent variable, which would be taking an example to have a better understanding. Let's take an example like independent variable and the other side dependent variable, and a researcher wants to calculate or wants to see what how the different incentive schemes calculated on various parameters affects the policy claim ratio sold by an agent. So in this example, the researcher has classified the independent variable as level 1, level 2 and level 3. Level 1 is representing the volume-based commission, that is the commission based on the volume of sales. Next we have the commission structure based on the value, and finally the commission based on profits. And the researcher wants to see the impact, how the different structure, how the different levels of commission affects the claim ratio of the agents of the policies as dependent variables. Whether all these levels are having the similar effect, or the effect or the relation gets changed due to the various level. So in this example, the researcher wants to see how different commission structure influences the claim ratio of policies sold by the agents. There are certain importance of independent variables in research. Let's see what are the significance of independent variables in particular. So, the independent variables defines the research questions and hypotheses. So every researcher in his research work needs to frame research questions and hypotheses, and here again. So the knowledge of the variable forms the foundation for these research questions and hypotheses. So without a clear independent variable, research questions is vague, unmanageable, and untestable. Let's see an example. Example: what affects the profitability of Indian General Insurance Company? Next, how does the adoption of digital technology affects the profitability of general insurance companies in India? So these are the two questions in different form. one in very vague form and another is in the very refined form, specifically mention independent variable and dependent variable. The next is independent variable facilitates formulation of hypothesis. So hypothesis, which is a predictive statement about the relationship between independent variable and dependent variable, which is only made when there is a clear independent variable. Example, we hypothesize that general insurance company in India with a higher level of digital technology adoption will demonstrate a lower combined ratio. So this is a hypothesis taking into account the independent and dependent variable. We have next independent variable helps in determining structure and research design in the study. The study observes and measures the independent variable, dependent variable, and try to analyze the relationship between the two variables under study. Example, application of statistical analysis like correlation or regressions. So in order to execute these analysis, there is a need of independent and dependent variable without which this analysis is impossible to perform. We have next the other categories of variables as subject variable. Subject variable are characteristics that vary across participants and that they cannot be manipulated by researcher. It means that there are certain elements, there are certain variables while executing the research work, they are beyond the control of the researcher and that has to be kept under control. These variables are naturally occurring, not under researchers' control, used to group or categorize participants, and often appear in survey-based or observational studies. Let's take an example. Let's take an example as the topic of the research is effect of training method on employee performance. Experimental variable based on this topic is type of training, online versus classroom. We have a subject variable as age, gender of the participant, educational level of the participants. We have dependent variables, employee performance score. We find that the training method experimental variable cause differences in performance based on age, gender, and educational level. Age and education subject variable only influenced how participants responded to the training. It simply means that it simply means that a training, same training has different outcome under different situations. We have a next category of the variables as dependent variable. So this is the next most important variable for any researchers to understand. A dependent variable is the variable that represents the outcome or effect in a research study. It is called dependent because its value depends on changes in the independent variable, shows the result or consequence of changes in another variable. It means that a researcher manipulates, makes necessary changes in the independent variable and tries to measure its effect on the dependent variable, how the dependent variable is reacting, is changing on account of necessary changes done or executed in the independent variable. The dependent variable is always measured or recorded in the study. Researchers usually do not control or manipulate the dependent variable like numeric in terms of marks, profit, score, categorical is yes or no, satisfied, unsatisfied customers. Dependent variable must be clearly defined in measurable terms. It means that how or in what form you are going to measure the dependent variable. As for example, the performance of an insurance company can be measured in terms of profit percentage or in terms of return on investment percentage, and this has to be properly established. This has to be logically established. This has to be predetermined, pre-decided by the researcher in order to take his testing further. So, it can be said that all conclusions of the research are based on the behavior of the dependent variables. As like independent variables, there are various names for dependent variables. You may refer to dependent variables as response variable, outcome variable, target variable, left-hand side variable. Why? Because it is positioned on the left-hand side of the equation. We have the next characteristics of dependent variable as distinguishing between independent and dependent variable can be tricky when designing a complex study. A dependent variable from one study can be the independent variable in other study. So it is important to pay attention to the research design which we have learned in the earlier section of this presentation. An example of a conceptual flow of independent and dependent variable has been shown below. Independent variable, we have a conditions A and B, and finally the researcher tries to understand the influence of independent variables under condition A and B on the dependent variable. Here is a clear and structured explanation of the research model using variables. So, till now, we have learned about the meaning and characteristics of independent variables, control variables, and dependent variables. So, in a nutshell, through an example, we will recapitulate all these. So, and we will take a research topic as an example to have a better understanding of these two variables. So the research topic is factors affecting the profitability of Indian General Insurance Company. The aim of the researcher is the study aims to identify which factor independent variable influence profitability dependent variables. So from the point of view of an Indian general insurance company, there are several independent factors, independent variables, which have been categorized under various themes as underwriting and selection, where there are two variables as claim ratio or loss ratio, premium growth rate. We have an operational efficiency as the second main theme, and the variables it represents as expense ratio, digital adoption score. We have a next theme as investment performance, The variable stands independent variable as phi investment yield, and next we have the product and market mix as an independent variable theme where the product diversification index stands as the independent variable in the form of sixth variable. We have the next category as dependent variables, which represents the outcomes of the study. So, the researcher has taken three dependent variables as dV1, dV2, dV3, named as combined ratio, return on assets, return on equity. So, keeping this research topic in mind, the researcher has classified, has categorized the various variables into independent variables, and then the broad category is dependent variables. The claim ratio, premium growth rate, expense ratio, digital adoption score, investment yield, product diversification index are some of the variables that have been considered by the researcher under independent variable. Whereas on the other side, combined ratio, return on assets, return on equity, these variables have been taken under the category of dependent variables. After the understanding of independent variables, control variables, dependent variables, we have the next type of variable as extraneous variable. We will see why the knowledge of extraneous variable is very much needed for the researcher. So extraneous variables are any variables other than independent variable that mix with the independent variable and influence the dependent variable if they are not properly controlled. It means that a researcher needs to control some external factors in order to arrive at a valid conclusions in a research, because these factors directly or indirectly influence the relationship between independent and dependent variables. So extraneous variable, these are unwanted factors that can affect the results under study. Variables that are not of interest but may unintentionally affect the dependent variable. They represent a potential source of error that careful researchers should identify, minimize, eliminate, or hold constant in order to maintain the integrity of the study, which is executed by the researcher through the process of randomizations. Extraneous variable, if they are left uncontrolled by the researcher, extraneous variables can distort findings and can lead to inaccurate or misleading conclusions about the true relationship between the independent and dependent variables. Extraneous variables may introduce various forms of research biases in the study, which needs to be minimized, which needs to be avoided by the researcher at all point of time. So the various biases that can be categorized as measurement bias. What is measurement bias? So we take an example to understand this. Customer satisfaction measured during festive season versus normal period. So this example signifies that the timing of the measurement is not appropriate. Omitted variable bias, studying profitability without including investment income by the researcher. We have a response bias. Customers give a higher rating because the agent is physically present. Temporal bias. Studying insurance performance during a natural disaster years. We have a selection bias threatening the validity, that is, accuracy of cause and effect relationship and reliability of the research finding. So, during a research process, these biases may crop up in one or other form, and every researcher need to have an understanding of these biases as well as efforts should be made to reduce or eliminate or minimize to the maximum possible extent. We have a next characteristic as a key component of strong experimental research design is the control of extraneous variables. Once an extraneous variable is successfully controlled, it becomes a control variable help to isolate the effect of independent variable. It means that when a researcher conducts a study taking independent and dependent variable and tries to find out what is the effect of changes in the independent variable over dependent variable under the circumstance that the extraneous variables, extraneous factors has to be under control. Otherwise, it would not be possible to to give to confirm that the changes made or observed in the dependent variable is only because of the changes executed in the independent variable. It cannot be said with confirmations. So that means our conclusions, our recommendations might be distorted. So we need to take appropriate, we need to be very alert and need to take accurate, accurate and appropriate actions in this regard. We take certain examples as extraneous variables which would help to have more clarity over the extraneous variables. Macro and environmental factors, gross domestic product growth rate, inflation rate, interest rate. We have a regulatory and political factors, IRDA regulatory changes, government social security schemes, taxations on insurance product. So these are some of the extraneous variables examples. We take further examples to have better understanding with a topic in mind. So the topic under the study is effect of study hours on exams performance. So we have independent variable as study hour, dependent variable as exam marks or outcome. So probable extraneous variables for this topic under research may be intelligence level of the participants, health conditions of the students, sleep quality of the students. These factors also affect the exam performance but are not the main focus. That means a researcher, while trying to make out the effect of study hours on exam performance, intelligence level, health conditions, and sleep quality of the participant student must be taken into account. The interpretation is if a student scores high, it cannot be said that is it because of more study hours or because of higher intelligence level of the study of the students under study. So this creates confusions unless extraneous variables are controlled. Extraneous variables are unwanted, external, influential, and must be controlled, which otherwise can distort results, reduce accuracy, and mislead conclusions of the study. And this is the reason why the knowledge, the understanding, the classification and control of these variables is very much needed by any researcher in his or her study. After the understanding of the extraneous variables, we have another variables as mediating variables. So these mediating variables explains how effect occurs and represents the indirect relationship. The, the variables that we have learned earlier, independent and dependent variable, where we have learned or where it has been shown that the changes in x variable has its effect on the dependent variable in terms of y. But in order to understand, in order to know how the effect, how the relationship is being affected, we need to understand the another variable termed as mediating variables. So, a mediating variable or mediator explains the process or mechanism through which an independent variable affects a dependent variable. A mediator explains how or why independent variables affects dependent variables under the study. It answers an important question as how or why does X cause Y. Mediating variables, it acts as a link between independent and dependent variables. It comes after the independent variable and before the dependent variable in the causal chain. Example, independent variable. After independent variable, we have mediating variable in middle and then comes the dependent variable in location wise. The mediator itself is influenced by the independent variable and the changes in the mediator leads to changes in the dependent variable. When a mediator is included in research analysis, the direct relationship between independent variable and dependent variable may weaken and indirect effects become stronger. Mediating variables is used in advanced analysis such as mediation analysis, structural equation modeling. We take few examples in regard to mediation variable. The topic is of the study is effect of study hours on exams performance. So, keeping this topic in view, we have a probable mediating variable as for example, independent variable is study hours, mediator is understanding the subject, and dependent variable is exams mark. So let's interpret this. So more study hours leads to better understanding of the subject and better understanding of the subject leads to higher marks. So understanding explains how study hour improves performance. We have a next point as incorporation of mediators and moderators is done in exploratory research design where mediator explain how effects occurs whereas moderator explain when or for whom the effect is stronger. Exploratory research design is investigating a problem to gain initial understanding. Under the category of mediating variables, there are three forms of mediating variables. Let's dive into it. We have the first type of mediating variables as the topic is leadership training program employee empowerment and team productivity. So the researcher wants to understand what would be the impact on team productivity on account of changes being made in leadership training program, keeping employee empowerment as mediating variables. So, leadership training program, it is representing independent variable, employee empowerment is representing mediating variable, and team productivity, it is representing dependent variables in the research study. So, the effect of training on productivity is not direct but occurs through empowerment of the employee concerned. Example 2, research topic: Impact of digital financial literacy on insurance purchase decision. The trust of the policyholders mediates the relationship between financial literacy and insurance purchase decision. Mathematical equation is, we have the path between leadership training program and employee empowerment is termed as path A, and the path between employee empowerment and team productivity is path B, and the path between leadership training program and team productivity is path C. So that if a researcher wants to calculate the total effect under the study, which can be calculated as sum of indirect effect and sum of the direct effect between the variables. So through these examples, it can also be observed that there is a single mediating variable between independent variable and dependent variable, and as such it is also termed as simple mediating structure. We take the next example as the job training. We have job performance as dependent variable, and in between these two variables there is self-efficiency, which represents confidence of the employee, and self-competency, which is representing the skills of the employee. And these two variables, they are acting together as mediating variable in between job training and job performance. So it can be said that both independently contribute to better job performance. There are multiple mediators acting at the same time, each providing a separate pathway from independent to dependent variable, and hence it is can be rightly said that it is a category of parallel multiple mediating structure. After this, we have the next category as sequential multiple mediating structure, where there are two mediating variables between independent and dependent variable, and these two mediating variables, they are not acting at the same time, rather they are acting in a sequence, and hence it is said that sequential multiple mediating structure. In the given example, employee feedback is acting as independent variable, motivation and persistence of the employee are acting as mediating variables, task completion by the employee are acting as dependent variables. We have next category as moderating variables represented by M, which explains when or for whom the effect occurs. A moderator influences the level, direction, or presence of a relationship between an independent variable and a dependent variable. It answers the question when or under what condition does X affect Y. It answers the question as whether effect of X on Y changes across level of Z. Third question, does the effect of X on Y depends on Z? This is called interaction regression. Some examples of moderating variables are income level moderates the relationship between literacy and insurance purchase decision. In other words, a person may be highly literate, he wants to purchase some insurance policy, but the final decision to purchase the insurance policy depends on the income level with the respondent. Similarly, digital infrastructure moderates the relationship between financial literacy and claim settlement efficiency. Moderating variable shows you for whom, when, or under what circumstances a relationship between dependent and independent will hold, thus helps the researcher to judge the external validity of the research. It can increase or decrease the effect of independent variable on dependent variable. The relationship may become positive, negative, or insignificant. Moderating variables does not directly affect dependent variable but modifies the relationship between independent and dependent variables. The effect of independent variables on dependent variables depends on the level of moderator. Let's take an example. Example 1. Why social media can predict the level of loneliness. This relationship may be stronger for adolescent participants than for the older. Age is a moderator here. Example 2. Study time improves performance more strongly for high intelligence students than for others. Example 3. Advertising leads to higher sales only when brand reputation is strong. Example 4. Claim settlement improves profitability more when customer trust is high. Example 5. Research topic: Impact of digital financial literacy on insurance purchase decision. Income level moderates the relationship between literacy and insurance purchase. Example 6. If organizational support is high, then training will strongly improve the performance of employees. If organizational support is low, then employee training will have weak effect on employee performance due to lower satisfaction. In other words, same training will have different outcomes under different situations. We have the importance of moderation. Why a researcher needs to have the understanding regarding moderated variables. So, the lack of understanding of the moderating variable will result in false rejection of hypothesis, which is technically called as type 1 error. It will lead to oversimplification of conclusions, and finally it will result into the conflicting research design. So diagrammatically we can say that the, in the given example training we have job satisfaction and performance. Should training act as an independent variable, job satisfaction act as a mediating variable, and performance as a dependent variable. If we take moderations into account in the same equation, the equation stands as follows: that the organizational support is influences the training, which influences the performance. If we take the mediating and moderating variables together, so the equations stands as below: training we will lead to job satisfaction, and then job satisfaction will lead to higher performance, and the organizational support will lead will act as a moderating variable in this case, because it has its repercussion, it has its effect on the training. So the key takeaways regarding various effect as indirect effect, mediation, mediation, it answers how or what does X affect Y. In independent variable affect dependent variable through mediator, which is calculated in the multiplication of path A. We have a direct relationship, that is, independent variables affect dependent variables without mediator. It answers the question as when or for whom does X affect Y. Interaction, we have the moderation effect. Interaction term independent variable into moderator, that is, it represents the changes in strength or direction. And finally, we have moderated mediation, which is a combination of mediation relationship as well as moderation relationship. It answers the question how and when does X affect Y through M under different conditions. So indirect effect varies across the level of moderators. We have the moderated mediation relationship, which is consists of direct and indirect effects under the study. Moderated mediation improves the quality, depth, and validity of the research findings. It helps the researcher move from a simple explanation to a context sensitivity, mechanism based explanation, which is what high quality research demands. Moderated mediation transforms a study from X affect Y through M to X affect Y through M, but only under conditions Z. Moderated mediation improves the study outcomes through adding context sensitivity, enhances the predictive power, which makes the model more precise, accurate, context aware, and segment specific. It improves the theoretical contribution, as for example, instead of saying motivation theory explains performance, it should be said as motivation theory explains performance only in supporting environment. This sounds a stronger theoretical contribution. Moderated mediation makes the conclusion more realistic, actionable, and publishable. We have additional key academic values regarding the moderated mediation relationship. It introduces conditional indirect effects, identified boundary conditions, enhances model robustness, increases external validity, and providing multi-layered causal explanations. We have a next category of variables as Quantitative variables and qualitative variables. A variable that can be measured numerically. It represents a quantity or amount. A researcher can perform mathematical operations on these values. Quantitative variables can be further classified as discrete quantitative variables and continuous quantitative variables. We have another variables as categorical variables. So categorical variables are variables that classify data into groups or categories rather than in numerical values. As for example, types of policy, life, health, motor insurance policy. This is a categorical variable because it represents categories, not numbers. It describes a quality or characteristics. The numbers are assigned are just labels. Categorical variables allow you to compare groups and see if patterns hold across different types of companies. Categorical variables is further classified as nominal categorical variables and ordinal categorical variables. So let's take an example in order to have a better, more clear concept regarding the quantitative and categorical variables. So in this table we can see that the quantitative variables, also known as numerical variables, is classified as discrete quantitative variables and continuous quantitative variables. For the example under discrete quantitative variables, it can be set as number of policies sold, number of claims filed. So this represents discrete quantitative variables, whereas the combined ratio in percentage 95.72 percentage, expense ratio percentage 24.81 percentage, all these are continuous quantitative variables. Quantitative variables can also be categorized as interval scale and ratio scale. So, interval scale, numerical scale with equal interval but no true zero. Let's take an example. A researcher records temperature in an office. The value comes as 20 degrees Celsius, 25 degrees Celsius, 30 degrees Celsius. Here, the interpretation is the difference between 20 degrees Celsius and 30 degrees Celsius temperature is meaningful, but the 30 degrees Celsius is 10 degrees more than 220 degrees Celsius, which is does not mean that 30 degrees Celsius is as twice as 15 degrees Celsius, because 0 degree Celsius does not mean no temperature. There is some sort of temperature at 0 degrees Celsius as well. There is still temperature. So under the circumstances, we can use Pearson correlation, which represents as linear relationships. We have another scale under the quantitative variable as ratio scale, which means numerical scale with equal intervals and a true value. You can add, subtract, multiply, divide. A researcher can also compare ratio as twice, half, etc. Let's take an example. A study measures monthly income of policyholder. The values can be 20,000, 40,000 rupees, 60,000. So here Zero rupees means complete absence of income. Rupees 40,000 is twice of rupees 20,000. The ratios are meaningful. Another examples under ratio scales as income in rupees, age in terms of years, test scores, and this is used for Pearson correlation or linear relationship. We have the next variables under categorical variables as nominal variable, which means a nominal scale is used for naming or labeling categories only. There is no order or ranking. A nominal variable is a categorical variable where categories have no order or ranking. Categories are just labels or names. No ranking is possible here. Let's take an example to have an understanding of nominal categorical variables. A study classifies insurance company into public sector, private sector, foreign insurers. So here there is no ranking. One category is not greater or smaller than the other. The other examples can be taken as in the terms of gender as male, female, other. In terms of insurance can be life insurance, health insurance, motor insurance. And finally we have an ordinal categorical variables, which means an ordinal variable is a categorical variable where categories have a meaning order or ranking. Ranks exist, but the intervals are unequal. We know the order, but the difference between level is not quantifiable. Example: a researcher studies consumer satisfaction with claim settlement services, and the responses are highly satisfied, satisfied, neutral, dissatisfied, highly dissatisfied. So explanation under this study topic is there is a clear ranking from highly satisfied to highly dissatisfied, but the difference between the level is unknown. The gap between satisfied and neutral is not necessarily equal between the gap between neutral and dissatisfied. We take few more examples under the ordinal categorical variables as market positions, which can be categorized as market leader, mid-sized challenger, small niche player. We have reinsurance strategy as heavy strategy, moderate strategy, low retention policy being followed by the insurers. Claim settlement rating: we can have poor ratings, average ratings, good ratings, excellent ratings. Income group: we have low income group, middle income group, high income group. Satisfaction level: we have low satisfaction level, we have medium satisfaction level, we can have high satisfaction level of the customers. So the conclusions under the original categorical variable is there is a clear order, that is the medium is greater than low, which is lower than high, but we do not know the exact difference between the levels. So, under the ordinal categorical level, we will be using Spearman rank correlation ordinal relationships. So, this entire variables, quantitative variables, categorical variables, and the subclassifications of quantitative variables as discrete variables, continuous variables, interval scale, ratio scales, categorical variables as nominal categorical variables, ordinal categorical variable can be summarizedly explained through this flowchart. So far, we have dealt with the research design, its importance, its significance, components, various types of variables, the meaning, importance, its uses. So after having an understanding of these components, so the next important thing that every researcher needs to be follow is the mapping of literature with variables, and that's a very, very important part of of the job during the research process. So let's dive into the process of mapping of literatures with variables, identifications, and so on. This is a literature review matrix table where the headlines as literature review, empirical evidence reported, variables identified, measurement proxy, and derived hypothesis. So through this literature review matrix, a researcher tries to find out that how the previous studies report to empirical evidence, how it helps to identify the variables, how those variables needs to be measured, and how those variables need to be developed into hypotheses based on the evidence. So there is a logical flow in the concerned area is literature. We have variable identifications, we have measurement of the variables, and then the development of the hypothesis. So through this literature review matrix, the researcher has identified certain themes as claim settlement efficiency, profitability, solvency position, ownership structure, and financial performance. So now these themes will be converted into hypotheses for further analysis. So based based on the themes identified through the literature review, we have we need to formulate the hypothesis which act as a blueprint in the study. So the hypothesis statement, it's for reference purpose only, it can be said as claim settlement efficiency has a significant positive effect on the profitability of general insurance company. Hypothesis 2. Claim settlement efficiency significantly influences the solvency position of the Indian general insurance companies. Hypothesis 3. There is a significant difference in claim settlement efficiency between public and private general insurance companies in India. And the hypothesis number 4 is claim settlement efficiency significantly affects the overall financial performance of Indian general insurance companies. So these are some of the hypothetical development of hypothesis, this taking taking some literature's review under study. A researcher needs to have the different needs to have the knowledge regarding different classifications, different types of hypothesis and its relationship as it can be categorized as direct relationship, as for example, digital financial literacy positively influences insurance purchase. We have mediation. Trust mediates the relationship between financial literacy and purchase. We can develop a hypothesis based on moderation into account. Income level moderates the relationship between literacy and purchase decision. We can take causal hypothesis as a base and develop a hypothesis as financial literacy at time 1 influences insurance purchase at time 2. Change and growth hypothesis: customers' trust increases over time with repeated service usage. Lagged relationship hypothesis: investment behavior at time 1 affects financial stability at time 2. We have a dynamic relationship hypothesis type as the relationship between income and insurance demand changes over time. And next we have panel or repeated measures hypothesis. The same individual shows different purchase behavior across years. Based on various types of variables and the hypothesis, let's reframe certain research questions. And here we will see how the knowledge of the variables equally helps in the formulation of research questions in research, which is one of the vital job of any researcher to do so. So we have as the nature of variables as quantitative versus quantitative analysis, and we will see certain examples under each category. So examples can be what is the relationship between claim settlement ratio in percentage and profitability, return on assets or return on equity of general insurance company in India. We may have a question as: is there a relationship between a company's digital adoption score quantitative and its combined ratio quantitative? So here we see that here both independent and dependent variables have been expressed in terms of quantitative. We have a next category of research questions as categorical versus categorical. Is there a relationship between department, human resource department, finance department, marketing department, and employee turnover intention? Is there an association between the type of bank, public sector bank, private sector bank, foreign banks, and loan approval status in terms of approved versus rejected? So here we see that in one of the variable is both the variables are categorical in nature, and the next category is combined ratio using both types. So combined analysis of research question consists of both quantitative as well as qualitative. So the questions that can be framed under this category is there a significant difference in profitability, return on assets, return on equity between public and private general insurance company in India? Does the type of treatment, surgical versus non-surgical, significantly influences patient's recovery time in days? So, one of the variables under this category is quantitative in nature, whereas the other variable is categorical in nature. So the final and finally we come to the conclusions as come to the conclusions as the knowledge and understanding of variables in research serves as the operational backbone of the research design. In absence of identification and measurement of variables, research design lacks structure, direction, and ability to produce credible and defensible findings. Variable gives the abstract research idea into a concrete form through independent and dependent variables. Knowledge of the variables guides the research design selection process. One variable influencing another is measured through experimental or quasi-experimental research design, whereas multiple variables predicting an outcome can be measured through correlation or regression analysis. Variable forms the foundation of the conceptual framework or theoretical framework. It means how different variables are interlinked, how the chosen variables link with the existing theory or support. This linkage ensures the research is grounded in established knowledge and not just a collection of arbitrary measures. Variable guides measurements and data collections. Variables facilitates alignments between research objectives, variables, data collection methods, and data analytical techniques. Variable ensures reliability and creditability of the findings. It enhances the robustness and comprehension of the research findings. It ensures the reliability, validity, and creditability of the findings through logical consistency between the problem statement and conclusions in the research. Incorporation of mediating and moderating factors strengthens the causal inference as well as the contextual interpretations of the findings. And finally, the knowledge of the variable facilitates decision making, significantly improves the academic and practical understandings. And if we have to conclude the entire knowledge, the entire understanding about the variables in one sentence, it can be said as variables are the alphabets of research. You cannot write a sentence, let alone a thesis, without knowing your letters. With this, I conclude. Thank you. Thank you for your patience, listening, and support. Thank you. Madam, I am over with my presentations. Is
Okay,
there
thank you, sir. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to our resource person, Mr. Gautam Sarma, sir, for his valuable and insightful lecture. Thank you very much, sir.
Madam, is there any questions from the participant?
In the chat box, sir.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, I do not find any questions in the chat box. Ma'am, I do not find any questions, any queries on the chat box.
Yes, sir. Not any query.
Okay, ma'am. So, with your kind permission, may I leave now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank,
Thank you so much,
thank you,
ma'am.
sir.